Welcome to This Commerce Life. We are an unscripted podcast dedicated to small businesses and entrepreneurs in the retail and consumer packaged goods space in Canada and the United States.
I am Phil Chang, co-host and co-founder.
And I'm Kenny Vanucci, co-host and co-founder of This Commerce Life.
Our love is the journey to retail, and our passion is sharing that with you every week.
We're losing a dimension with every engagement, but
oh my gosh,
it's good to see you guys again.
You too. Sometimes 2 dimensions better with us than 3. So
yeah. There's only so much you can take.
There's only so much 3D you really need from the 2 of us. So 2D is probably pretty good. And it's funny because I say, who the hell's Kieran? He goes, and I said, they came with the dad, because we haven't seen you since literally. Because I thought, I think Dad's probably going to be on the podcast. I know Dad was talking about being on the podcast. Like, this is like 5 months ago we've seen you though, right?
Well, yeah, because we had a slot booked. I think. I mean, clearly you guys are busy because I was booking a couple months out. And the previous one, I got wrecked.
Yeah, you all got COVID, no? Well, I feel like all of Ontario got COVID.
Well, yeah, exactly.
But you guys got hit pretty hard personally. Like, were you did it?
Yeah.
Oh no, it wasn't that bad for me. It was actually more so. This was like the tail end where I was mostly not symptomatic, but my voice just went. So I figured it wouldn't have been the optimal podcast setting, but
what?
Yeah, I think we're well versed in that, right? 4 years in, it's done the rounds a couple times. So feeling healthy and good now. So
That's good.
Cool. Oh, man. I can still taste your cider. It's kind of cool. Yeah.
With the lingering sensation.
Yeah, no, that was cool.
It made an impression. We were definitely, so he was like, "Who's Kieran?" I cider, and he went, "Yes, cider."
Well, it's funny because I remember the cider, and then your dad was beside. So I'm thinking, okay, yeah. And then I was thinking, hopefully Dad was coming on, because I know Dad said he was going to, or we were going to drag Dad on, something to that effect. So
yeah, which I did successfully.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Welcome. Yeah.
I was gonna say, well, if the lingering aftertaste 5 months later is if it gets too subtle, you can always buy more.
Yeah.
Really?
We should talk about that, because I actually do want to buy more. But let's get we'll get an intro in, and then we'll get going, because I think it won't be just me. Like, I think everyone will want some. So I'm especially excited because we do get a lot of folks from out west as well, and so getting fellow Ontarians on is nice to have. So we've got a couple of Ontarians on, but we've got Kieran, who runs Heartwood Farm and Heartwood Farm Ciders, and his dad, right? And so we met these guys at CHFA, and you guys were part of Innovation Alley, correct? Or Incubator. I always get the name wrong, but you were down the alley, and think of that show and think of like how many people, how many booths, how many like foods and tastes, but the cider and drinking some of your stuff really made an impression on us there. So
we actually do remember it. Like, that's funny, because if Phil knows, and if you look at this as a podcast, they know I forget everything. Like, I really do. I'll forget this podcast in about an hour. Like, it's honestly, things just don't stick anymore. But I do remember. I could remember where you were. I can remember where you were standing. I can remember, this one vividly.
Yeah.
Why do you think that's the case?
I think, you know what? I think first off, I love family.
Yeah.
So father, son, mother, daughter, mother, son, father's daughter, like any of those relations. First off, I just love that. 2, I think I just love anything to do with farming. I don't know shit about farming. I've grown a garden. But I don't know shit about farming. And anybody who can do farming, God bless them, right? In this country, especially because we don't do enough farming. We do a lot of it industrial or institutional farming, but we need to do little, like, more old school farming. So I think it was that. And then finally, like, honestly, the product was really, really good. And your son's very presentable. Like, it's all of it, I think. But
I think meeting you guys really helped.
1,000 booths of the show. And there might be 5 or 6 people that really stick in my mind. You guys were definitively one of them. I don't say that because you're on. I don't, wouldn't say anything. I just pretend I knew you and walk on. But I really did thoroughly enjoy the product, and I liked you too. And I thought, yeah, we just need to do a lot more promoting, I think, of farming in general, and then the products that go with it, et cetera. So
here's kind of how this goes. So this is like the most formal and organized part. So clearly it's not that formal or organized. What we'd love to do is, kind of for the next 40, 45 minutes is hear a little bit about you guys, why you are where you are. And then, obviously you shared a little bit of the story when we were at the booth as well, but to be able to tell the audience, how you got to where you are, making what you make. And then we can tell them where to get it. I know there's a farm boy. I live just on the edge of Mississauga and Etobicoke here in Toronto. So there's a farm boy that carries your stuff. So I wouldn't, the lingering effects isn't quite 5.5 months. It's been about 6 weeks since I went and bought some more, but
Nice.
but yeah. So anyway, I'll shut up and stop talking. But if you guys wouldn't mind jumping in, tell us about you guys and Heartwood Farm and
go back as far as you want.
Right,
Like, we do like the whole history of all of it. So light her up.
I guess, should I start then?
Yeah.
I can
take it away.
I can sort of go up to 2019 or so, and then maybe you can sort of carry it from there to the present.
Yeah.
So we moved. So my wife Val and myself and our 3 kids, who were much smaller then than they are now, 20 years ago roughly, moved out of downtown Toronto, and moved out to what shortly thereafter became known as Heartwood Farm. And the reason that we did that curious move is because my wife Val had, for a long time, harbored a real desire to get kind of back to the land. She grew up not on a farm, but in a farming community among, a very sort of close-knit group of people who, kind of really valued, had held some very agrarian values. She has Mennonite background, as do I actually. So even though, neither of us would be, what you might think of as postcard Mennonites, some of those agrarian values and those community values have really kind of found their way into subsequent generations, even of people who are in all other ways kind of very cosmopolitan and very urbane, that sort of thing. So I think she had been really interested in finding a piece of land that we could plant ourselves for a chunk of our lives. And at the time, I had just started up a creative agency actually, and most of our clients were they were in the States, and it was really just myself and a friend who had co-founded it. So we were very flexible. So it was 20 years ago was the right time for us to make a move, if a move was ever to be in the offing. And so we started looking around, and we found this place. And so in the 20 years that we've been here, she's been the farmer, and what that's meant for her is raising livestock, doing some gardening, although she really loves animals more than she loves plants. Mm-hmm. And so that has kind of filled our lives with horses and cows and sheep and goats and chickens, rabbits, llamas, dogs, cats. It's quite a menagerie. And so she began to learn how to raise animals. She was really drawn to regenerative agriculture. And by the way, this will trace around to the cidery. You said you kind of interested.
No, take your time.
We love it. We love it.
That's all good.
Keep going. This is
we're gonna get there.
Yeah.
And so what she began to learn is how one of the greatest agricultural perils of our time is the depletion of topsoil. Right, we've got our topsoils are eroding, they're running off, and what's left is less and less vital in terms of its composition of nutrients and organic matter, its ability to absorb rainfall. These things are all on the decline, and so there is a growing number of farmers who are interested in redressing some of these challenges, because ironically, maybe paradoxically, industrial agriculture is is actually the cause of much of the problems that agriculture now faces, but not inevitably so. And so we've been looking, for all those years, looking at ways of farming in a way that builds soil health, right? That deepens topsoil, that increases organic matter, increases the ability for soil to cycle water and cycle carbon, the ability for plant matter to cycle oxygen, et cetera, et cetera. So that's been her journey over 20 years, and it continues and indeed intensifies into today. So where my story kind of intersects this, I mean, my story intersects because I lived here as well. I moved here as well, but I was working off farm for most of that time, right up until about 2016 or so, when I left the creative agency that I had co-founded. And I had probably, I think it was around 2011 or so, I had just fallen in love with fruit tree horticulture. I was just smitten by the idea that you could plant trees. I mean, I've always been a bit of a fan of trees, right? Who's not? I mean, who doesn't love a nice big sturdy tree, right?
Yeah.
Who didn't love climbing them? And this idea that, you plant these fruit trees and they just give you apples abundantly every year. I just became smitten with this. And so I started planting all these trees without really any intention for what I would do with a harvest, should I ever be so fortunate. And so it was around the time, like I said, probably 2016 or so, when I left the agency, I started thinking more seriously about my fruit trees and what am I going to do if I ever actually get fruit. And so I tried making some cider, and I just did it like anybody else does, in a couple of carboys in the basement, right? Just how you make beer or wine or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I was really kind of delighted by how easy it was actually to make cider that tasted pretty good. And because I had left the agency and was kind of at a bit of a juncture in my own path, I began to get the wacky idea that maybe this would be a good thing to do commercially. And it's funny because if I knew then what I know now about, being a commercial cidery, I'm not sure I would have done it. And yet, had I not done it, I would have missed what has become, one of the most remarkable pieces of my own life's journey, right? Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of which is that, as you point out, we're now doing this kind of as a family. And I should say the other person, our production manager, Matt, and Kieran will talk more about Matt. He's not a blood relation, but if his own parents weren't so good, we'd adopt him, and he would be a son anyways. So so the whole thing feels like a family, including him for sure. Anyway, so I'll maybe just sort of gloss over the next couple of years and then pass the baton to Kieran.
Oh, you got lots of time.
Yeah, we started the cidery. I started playing around with putting hops in cider. I started playing with putting currants in cider and other berries. Tried, one of our middle son, Nathan, Kieran's younger brother, suggested at some point that we needed, this is when he was, probably an early teenager and going through that sort of manly man thing where you impress your friends by how much hot pepper you can eat without. And so he suggested that we should probably try using, cayenne peppers or something to make a rager of a cider.
Okay.
And I was crazy enough to take him up on the challenge. And so we made a cider out of with apple cider and hot pepper and honey.
But you don't get that anymore, right? I've never seen. Do you sell that somewhere?
Yeah, for sure we do. In fact, it's our second biggest seller. I thought it was a complete novelty. I was thinking nobody has ever, what? I made 2 kegs of it for a fundraiser that was kind of it's for a thing in town here. And I knew a whole bunch of university students would be at this fundraiser. And I thought, okay, if there's anybody who's going to give this a try, it's going to be these kids, right? Yeah. So I made it on a lark, and I must have had some business cards with me or something like that at the table for this fundraiser. Because the next day I started getting calls from people saying, how do I get more of that? I'm like, what do you mean more of it? Why would you want more of it? It was a joke.
I buy that. They don't carry that at my farm, boy. I'm gonna have to go find it. Maybe I'll just go bug the manager.
So we'll plug that later, because there's a whole kind of interweaving of the story there. We can.
Okay, got it. I'm jumping ahead.
Everything that I've talked to up till now relates to hard cider, right? So alcoholic cider, fermented apple juice,
Right.
And that's kind of what we were doing. And and I think I started this up. I think I probably thought of it as kind of a hobby, but as I had to invest more in renovating buildings and equipment, I suspect I had some thought back at that time that I needed to make this some kind of a business, because it was just starting to cost a lot.
Yeah.
I never really did any of this with very much intention. And then at a certain point, I think it was 2017, we had a young friend who would come out to the farm to volunteer and just kind of get a little bit of a dose of farm life. And we offered her a job. And so she helped with a bunch of stuff on the farm. She helped in the cidery, became really enamored of making cider. And so the next year we kind of anointed her as the new cider maker. And so she and I worked together, and I passed on what I had learned to date, and she kind of took it over from there. And it was just a wonderful person to work alongside. And then a couple of years later, she decided to leave to pursue other avenues in her life. And at that time, Matt and Kieran, so Matt again being our production fellow, and Kieran being this guy, both sort of indicated an interest in getting involved. And that's kind of what there was a bit of a kind of crossing the Rubicon there, right? Because we could kind of justify having one person on staff, but we couldn't justify having two other people on staff if we weren't going to take this kind of seriously.
Right.
So we said yes to Matt and Kieran, and I feel like in so doing, we said yes to a different path, right? And which is the one that has kind of unfolded and continues to unfold. So maybe at that point, I would take a bit of a breath. If you guys have questions.
I got two quick things, because I don't know, like, where in Ontario are you? Like, because I don't know much of, I mean, you said East Van, I know where you are, but you're not in East Van, so I don't know where the hell you are. Where in Ontario? How big's this farm? Because you got a lot of shit going on in this thing, right?
So we are just, we are an hour and a half northwest of downtown Toronto. Or closer.
I've been in that area, Phil, right? That sounds like
we passed through it. So during your complaining, you definitely would have passed through.
Oh.
Yeah. So we met a friend who works for Nuts to You up in Guelph, like downtown Guelph, for dinner. And so all the way up there, he complained. So you would have missed Kieran and his dad because you were bitching.
Because you said it was like next door practically.
Yeah, I would have been like
a million miles. What the hell? And
you've been like, so yeah.
Jesus Christ! I mean, Mark could have driven down to see us. Why do we got to drive all the way up to this place? Oh, it's a beautiful drive. Mamma mia! Bring it into the city, by Jesus. Okay, so I know where you are, and how big's the farm?
So the farm is 42 acres.
Because I've been looking. I looked at the website ages ago. Like, you got a lot of real estate, right? It's a pretty big.
Well, I mean,
as space.
I mean, as farms go, I mean, certainly if you between us and you, there are farms that are in the prairies that are thousands of acres.
Well, we got them in BC. There's ranches and farms that are like freaking huge.
Yeah. So like, there's no this is one of the interesting things. Like, on a farm that's 42 acres, and it's a wonderfully diverse place ecologically. We have wetlands, we have ponds, we have pastures, forests, maple sugar bush, but there's no one purely agricultural enterprise that could actually create livelihood on such a small land base. Right. It's just not possible. Which is the other thing that we're realizing, that in order to farm, you need some sort of ancillary, some sort of value add approach, right? Which is the other thing that the cidery offered us. Right. So I mean, we can talk more about that. But to your other question about what's going on here, like, we have tents that we rent out to people. It's kind of 3-season. We also do, because I have a background in sort of the corporate world, We also bring teams here for, team building, for
The
leadership
think sessions and the retreats, etc.
retreats. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
No,
So we've
that's
got-
good. But that's smart though, because to your point, I think on 42 acres, like you really got to hone in, because it's not it's a lot of land, but it's not a lot of land to do really anything. Don't, and I'm not discounting it, but that's a tough space to do things in. So you need other sources of revenue, and if you can get it from that way, because then you can maintain a really cool thing, is what it looks like you guys have. It's a pretty cool space.
Yeah, it is
Like
cool.
you do a lot of cool shit, right? And I love the cidery more than anything. I mean, I love it because we love the product, but no, it's very cool. Very cool.
So yeah, I mean that kind of takes us up to early 2020, I guess, right?
Yeah. You guys remember anything that happened in early 2020?
No, we're all trying to forget that time, because it wasn't just 2020. It went into 21 and 22, and it feels like in 23 it didn't go away either. And 24, we all have it again. So quite frankly, no, not really.
Yeah. Well, so that is kind of around the time that myself and Matt joined the fray. Now, I mean, I could also rewind back to 2017, I guess around that time when the cidery was incorporated. Obviously, I was the beneficiary of a couple bottles being slung my way when I was still in school. But I was in university at this point. So there were a couple points where my dad would kind of, soft pedal the idea of,
Right.
This could be you one day, who knows? And for a while I would, laugh it off. And I thought that was the last thing I'd want to do.
You're the old man, right?
Well, yeah, exactly. So I graduated from University of Waterloo along with Matt. Actually, we both graduated in 2019. I studied poli-sci. He studied poli-sci and business as well. So he had the business add-on, which is kind of relevant in this story. So the way the time frame worked out.
Are you going to tell the origin story?
Oh,
You and Matt?
So it is kind of a fun story. Yeah. So Matt and I, we went to school together, as I mentioned. We were actually also born in the same house. So my parents and Matt's parents actually co-purchased this triplex, I guess, in the west end of Toronto in the mid 90s. And so we were both born into that
That's
same
awesome.
house. So
That's amazing.
in my case, I'm literally friends with him since day one.
That's crazy.
In the
Wow.
early days, I think we were probably frenemies more than anything. So we do go about as far back as you
Well,
possibly
you can't go back much farther.
No, exactly. So yeah. So I mean, that's a cool tie-in too. Like we were close friends throughout university, but when the opportunity presented itself for the two of us to kind of join this new burgeoning enterprise, we were both interested. I think I had kind of gotten over that initial hump of like, forget it, Dad, I want nothing to do with this. And the opportunity to work, closely alongside him as well was really cool. And like I said, he had that business educational background. He had also started a few businesses himself just throughout school, just as kind of sock projects to see what he could pick up along the way. So I think he had kind of a knowledge base and an interest level in entrepreneurship that I honestly didn't really have. Like I've always been a good student, but being a student is really about being obedient and following orders and guidelines and doing things within convention, right? Whereas being an entrepreneur, so to speak, or just being involved in a small business, you have to be adaptive and responsive to variables that just kind of throw themselves at you unexpectedly. So it was a real reorientation. I mean, the first big one for us obviously came in early 2020, right? So about 3 months into the gig, we had this curveball thrown where the world shut down, and we had been lucky to set up our online store like a couple months before that, where we were maybe making one sale a month. It was like, okay, we got an online sale.
And I said it was stupid. and we should save ourselves the $30 a month because it wasn't worth it.
Well,
That's what I said.
That was our Shopify subscription was $30.
That's when Kieran doesn't listen to Dad Brent and just says that, you know what, whatever, old man, just do your thing, go do whatever you do, and I'll do this part. That's good.
Yeah, exactly. And for a couple of months it seemed futile, but literally the moment the pandemic hit and things shut down, as you guys know, people started champing at the bit, and it was a combination of things. Like some of it was people were drinking more alcohol at that point, but also there was a real push to support local businesses, 100%. Support small businesses, and really get in touch with the supply chain at a time when so much of it was in flux. So it was cool to see just a consumer base that had it kind of found this new sense of empowerment, I would say, and a desire to see where their money was going. So it was that was kind of my first opportunity to connect with the people who were interested in our brand, and again, just in a really small scale grassroots way, expand our presence a little bit. A lot of word of mouth and just sort of organic growth came out of that in the subsequent year or so. But I will say there that initial boon of online sales, it eventually started to plateau, and it felt like doing things that way. I mean, we really did have ostensibly one revenue channel for the better part of 2 years, along with a bit of sort of on-site patio traffic when we were allowed to be open.
When you were allowed to be open, though, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it was really just one channel for a good chunk of those years, and I think the lesson that we quickly took was that, okay, this opportunity is still a great one. It's connected us with a lot of really interesting people and a great sort of loyal consumer base, but it's only going to get us so far, and we have to look for other opportunities to grow and get the brand out there and maybe think outside the box. So that dovetails nicely into the advent of the non-alcoholic beverage line. So Heartwood Sparkle, which was born in the summer of 2021. And this was totally Matt's brainchild. And I had very little to do with it. And honestly, at the time I was just like, okay, well, we have another thing that we can sell to customers who are, if they have kids or they're pregnant or not drinking, then fair enough. They got something to purchase. But I don't think at that point I fully recognized the suite of opportunities that was going to open up. And it was only once we launched it and got into the market, we started to see, okay, well, this little mom and pop shop down the road from us is interested in carrying it in their cafe or in their retail store. And then someone else who has a store heard about it because they were in and they grabbed the can, and so we had this kind of interesting mosaic of connections that was emerging, whereby for the longest time it was just someone loved the product and they bought it from us directly so they could stash it in their fridge and work through it over the course of a month or whatever, to people saying, wow, we love the brand, and having a business ourselves, we think it could be a really interesting supplement to what we're doing, what we're selling, and we kind of see the value in this as a way of connecting with our customers. So shifting from just thinking about our business as D2C and dealing with end users directly, to that kind of B2B model where you're actually dealing with retailers and selling your products wholesale. That was a really big shift for us in a couple ways, I would say. So for one, it allowed for that diversification of channels. So as some products or channels ebb and flow throughout the year, it's really nice knowing that if this thing drops off a little bit, you got this thing that maybe you can bump up. It just gives you more levers to pull. But the other thing I would say is more like existentially for me, I think I had kind of, Kenny, you were talking about just the inner workings of family businesses and how there's some extra texture in that whole web. And I think it was kind of hard for me coming in and feeling like, okay, well, I'm getting the keys to the kingdom here because I'm a family member, but this isn't really my thing. my dad started it, and am I just out here doing his bidding? Like, what's my role in it all? But that was really my opportunity to, alongside Matt, like chart that new path, build out new relationships. And so I think for me, I felt a lot of newfound agency in really feeling like, okay, I'm not just the kid of my parents coming in and doing what they were already doing. I'm actually, I'm thinking about things differently, and I'm, leveraging that brand story that they were the ones that, that actually established, but I'm transitioning that into new horizons. So 100%. That was really empowering for me.
Yeah.
So and so that was like I said, about 3 years ago that we launched Sparkle, and it's grown steadily since then. And we can get more into the specifics and the growth curve there if you want. But that's kind of how I started off. So like joining into the family business at a point, I felt like I was almost kicking and screaming, and then it started to feel a little more natural, and it felt like I was finding my groove. And it feels like, as we've meandered through this journey, we've been able to learn a lot from my parents for sure, and work alongside them, but also just find a lot more autonomy in our roles, and feel like we're really kind of making an impact. So that's been cool.
Well, you worked toward that too, right? I mean, at the end of the day, like, jobs of parents, like there's 3 of them on here. I mean, our jobs are really just to try to, give you as much advice and guidance as we can. Hopefully, you learn some things from us, but really at the end of the day, the best thing that happens is when you do see the kids do things, right? Because in a lot of cases, you could have done the opposite. You could have been given this and do sweet bugger all with it, or completely screw it up, or not want to do it, or just do half-assed. Right? Because that happens more times than not too. So, be proud of yourself, because I'm sure your dad is, but that you guys actually took it and did something really cool with it. I mean, it's lovely packaging. It's a good product. The story's phenomenal. It's priced well. I mean,
yeah,
we've got way more things right.
There's like 18 things there that, we've like 300 episodes where easily, there are a whole bunch of founders that went, no, I got like a couple of things right, and I got a whole whack of things wrong, right? Like, right. So yeah, it's pretty amazing. Yeah.
I think it is. I agree. I think it's just really freaking cool, right? Mm-hmm. It really is.
Oh, that means a lot. That's I'm sure we're not the first to tell you we have gotten things wrong. So if you want to get into some of the
well, you can talk about the trials and tribulations, and I'll tell you why, Kieran, because a lot of younger companies do listen to the podcast, and I think it's like anything. The service that we all should provide is, you can make your own mistakes. You can make, or you can learn from the ones I've been trying not to do them, but that's okay if you make them and you learn. But so what have been some of the tribulations or trials?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. You could kind of, sever this up a bunch of different ways, but I would say one of them is in a family business. We're really lucky to have just really good, healthy relationships. I think we communicate well, we get along well. We're not confrontational people, but I would say there is a tension.
You need your dad to leave the room now, or
yeah, exactly.
Do you want to get to the honest talk, or should we get you out of the room and dad will actually tell us what's really going on?
yeah, but like I would say there's a tension not even between any of the individuals involved, but more so just within that system, right? When the professional relationships are so deeply personal, and like I've reflected on both with my parents and my best friend, essentially, like where does the sort of like coworker side end and the personal side begin? That can feel really complex and tricky to navigate. So that's been something I would say at times struggled to navigate, and probably more recently come to appreciate more.
Right.
But in terms of the trials and tribulations, I do think that's a big one that's probably shared by a lot of family businesses, regardless of the scope and scale, right?
I think there's another kind of maybe it's not a shade of that, but it's one of the other tensions that we navigate is that, like, we do see ourselves as a missional sort of business, right? Like underneath all the products that we make is an ethos, right? About how to live in the world, how to regenerate soil, how to be good to the planet, right? How to do these things. And so we have, on the one hand, the side of the business that is about, very much about soil health and animals, and it's about tourism, like bringing people, but giving them deep experiences, right? Sometimes we call it regenerative tourism, right? It's not just an animal farm, it's not just a menagerie, right? It's like we want people to leave even a little bit transformed, right? So that's kind of our belief system on that side. On the product side, we're all about the numbers. It's like, because the margins are thin, And so in order to make any of it go, we have to be really disciplined about just the kind of the raw, the raw realities of what it means to run a business and how to get to profitability and all that kind of stuff. And sometimes the sort of the mission, the values, those sort of deeper, more existential things kind of wind up in some sort of conflict, or at least a tense conversation, if you will, with the KPIs of the business, So that's another thing I would say, when we're thinking about, like, what are all the different tensions that we navigate? That's one of them too.
That one makes total sense though, right?
Yeah. We love, we've talked to so many, kind of family-based business. Like, so one, Kenny and I are huge fans of family businesses. We appreciate kind of like all the dynamics, and then we really love them, right? And we also think the belief of our podcast is we think that, as a country, we haven't done it any justice. The only ones we ever talk about are the really famous ones, the Westons, the Irvings, the Eatons, if I really date myself, right? But the truth is, there are lots of families like yours that have built, kind of amazing businesses, trying to do some amazing things. And we're constantly amazed by the grittiness that you go through as a business, right? Because business is gritty. It's all about we ran campaigns, did we get the right clicks? Are we driving conversions? Are we getting enough? Like, what's the lifetime value of our consumers? But then there's a moment that families seem to be able to stop and go, okay, family dinner, let's go have family dinner. That shit stays in there, right? And family, or maybe it doesn't. It depends on who you are, but we are constantly amazed by that stuff, right? So we love to hear, you know what I mean? Because I think that's like sophistication in a business, right? Like, when you work for a big company or a marketing firm, you drop it, you commute home, and then if you don't want to talk to them, you turn off emails, right? But if you and Kieran were going at it over margins, you can't, you got to figure out how to pick up a dinner, right? Yeah.
That's a really good point, and it's something I've sort of I've mused about the last couple of years, because I still live in I live in Kitchener now, so went to school in KW, still live in the area, have a lot of the same friends I had throughout school, and so you've got me and Matt that have been in this world of kind of trying to essentially bootstrap this business alongside my parents for a couple of years and making modest livings doing it, with big aspirations of the billions we're going to make down the line. And then I have friends that are software developers or in like tech sales, where they work hard and they're compensated pretty well for it, but they can essentially turn off their brain at the end of the day and show up for their friends, and all of that separate. Whereas for us, it's like, the more you care about the people around you, in this case, friends and family, the more invested you feel like you need to be in that enterprise, right? Because we're all implicated. We all have a stake in not only the thing doing well and making at least a little bit of money, but also that mission that he was talking about, right? We all share this value set, and it's hard. It's hard not to get captured by that, which can be a really good thing, or at times something to watch out for. So the question of like boundary setting, and even as I was alluding to, like where do these relationships shift from are we family right now? Are we coworker? How are we addressing this?
Well, family, if family is family, is friend family. But when are you dad, and when are you like a co-partner or a business partner of mine? Like, because those lines are hard. It's sometimes harder on the dads than anything, because it's, you're always, you can't separate. It's always going to be dad, son, but it's also going to be, co-workers, co-founders, it's a dance, right?
Yeah, it is a dance. I mean, there are some things I think about my my nature that work well in this regard, just in that like even before this, I've never been particularly authoritarian kind of guy, and I don't think I've been a particularly authoritarian kind of dad, right?
Nope.
And so
and validation.
Blink twice if you don't.
Give us the true answer outside of words.
Right. So I mean, I don't I've always sort of, I mean, since my kids have been in their teens, even, I've sort of felt almost more like their buddy than their dad, right? So it hasn't been very difficult for me, anyways. I can't speak on Kieran's behalf, but it hasn't been difficult for me to think about this younger generation as coworkers, and also the fact that they are as competent as they are, the fact that they are are as responsible as they are. Just it means that I never bring a sense of needing to be overbearing or needing to be the heavy. That would be hard. Like if I was constantly showing up, kind of with that kind of mindset, I think it'd be very hard to have to be in business relationship with your dad if that was the way he was showing up.
It would be brutal. I mean, even if you weren't a dad, think about it, Brent. Why would you want to work with someone like that?
Right. Sure. Yeah.
Seriously.
Right. But especially if it's a family.
It's even worse if it's your dad. I'm stuck with you.
Right. So anyways, we're all pretty chill, I guess is what I'm saying. And also we're all pretty competent. And maybe that's what I'm saying. It's like, I think those two things take a lot of stress and tension out of a working relationship, where in a deficit of either one of those things, you might have a lot more aggravation.
Right.
Get ugly. Yeah.
Get ugly.
Yeah. I mean, so the other thing I'd say that's been really cool for me, I think, is, like when I was working my way up through the ranks as a student and not really tapped into the corporate world, so to speak, like that coincided with his close to 15 years running this business in Guelph. And yeah, so he managed about a team of 30 people in that setting. And I think I always, I kind of admired at least what I had heard from, some of the people he worked with. Actually, another fun tie-in, Matt's mom worked with my dad at this creative company for over a decade.
The tangled web we weave.
Oh, no joke. That's wow.
But yeah, he always kind of had,
Awesome.
he was the boss, so to speak, for that time. But I don't think he was ever really perceived that way. Like he was not one for superiority or hierarchy. Right. Obviously there were accountabilities and everything, but it's been cool now being able to see, on one hand, he's not a micromanager. He gives us a ton of autonomy, as I was saying earlier. But every so often he'll kind of pitch in with bits of wisdom here and there, and often help to just point things in a good direction, or frame them in a way that we might not have thought about.
Right.
I can imagine only comes with more decades of lived experience than we would have. So it feels like there's a really good balance there. And yeah, there you have it.
It's very grown up.
Okay, but we appreciated that one, so that's good.
No,
so let me just back it up for 1 second, because I think one thing I do want to talk about, because it's always intriguing, is like one thing you did bring up, Brent, was the you've got a sort of, it's trying to match the KPIs in the business world with sort of the Mother Earth, because you are balancing the two. And I don't think it's an impossibility. I think I think where the impossibility comes in, I think our system sometimes values a shareholder much more than anything else. And I think that's when conflicts happen between planet and dollars. I don't think there needs to be this conflict. I think it's there and I think it can arise. But I guess my thing to you is like, how do you balance that? Because it is there's profits and there's margins and you have revenues to hit. And at times they can be at battle with, I don't know, doing the right thing, maybe is a bad way to say it, but you know what I'm getting at? Like,
Yeah.
If you can elaborate maybe a little bit more on that angle, or how do you do it?
Yeah, I once heard somebody in the beverage industry, a very principled guy, say, like the best way environmentally for any one of us to slake our thirst is to drink out of a tap. Just drink water out of a tap, right? And especially if you're pouring that into a reusable container, right?
Yeah.
That's the lowest footprint way of satisfying your thirst, right? So why do we have shelves and shelves full of ways of dealing with quenching our thirst that aren't that, right?
Right.
I mean, you can ask these questions about, like, we do all kinds of things in life to create delight, right? To create experiences, to sort of tickle the palate, right? In our case. And I think that's worthwhile. Like, I think these things kind of, they, give rise to joy, right? And give rise to experiences that aren't just plain vanilla. But you're right. When you do that, you have to start asking questions about what are the trade-offs that are being made to do that. We used to, back in the day, we put all of our stuff, just because it's in some ways easier to do so, we put all of our stuff into glass bottles. We realized as we began to scale, and we talked to a number of people who do supply chain analysis, that aluminum has a way lower ecological footprint than glass does, right? Glass, even when it's recycled, bottles aren't generally reused as bottles. They're generally ground up and used in other industrial products, right? And they're also heavy. But with aluminum, you've got bauxite mining, there are other problematic aspects, right? But for us, in that case, we decided to steer towards aluminum and away from glass. And it's kind of I think we're still acknowledging that any of these things has an externalized cost, right? Any of them does. And so we're going to try to be, like, being the best steward you can be means choosing the best option. Right. And right now we're in a process of, there are retailers who want us to do multi-packs, right? So now this is more packaging, right? Mm-hmm. So we'll figure out what is the lightest footprint way of meeting that customer demand, with the lowest ecological footprint. So, like, I think it's all about making compromises, but doing so with your eyes wide open, right. Knowing that, on some level, you're doing a thing that is, we could all survive if we just drank water out of the tap, right? Yeah. But there's value. We're trying to create delight. And in our case, we're trying to create products that, our tagline is reconnect to simple wonders, right? We're trying to sort of put a piece of the farm and all of the richness of the farm, its landscape, its animals, its diversity of life. Like, we're trying to bring that into this experience that our customers have. And so that's the value side. And we try to be open-eyed and minimize the environmental downsides whenever we can. Yeah, anything to...
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I was going to add on a more practical level is, the transition into the retail space and selling to grocery stores and independent retailers, cafes, stuff like that. As our products move out into the world, and it's no longer incumbent on our individual customers to order from us online or come out to the farm. In some ways, it's actually taken strain off of that relationship and made it more synergistic, I would say. Just in that, the products, we like to say, if you grab a can of Heartwood Sparkle on the shelves of Farm Boy, as you were alluding to, Phil, like you're getting an opportunity to engage with and experience our brand and our story and all the values that have really underpinned what we've done for 20 years out here. But it's a way of taking the footprint and that I don't know, like kind of intense element of everything being dependent on the farm. It's removing some of that. It's alleviating the stressors, and it allows those two things to have more of a symbiotic relationship. So the nice thing is, as we continue to scale the beverage side of the business, which we do have to do for this thing to be viable, we do so in a way that doesn't put any more of that strain on the farm. So the farm can operate regeneratively, and it can offer sort of high touch, specialized, intimate experiences for visitors who come out here. And more products can kind of flow onto the shelves at these stores, and so we can sort of enlist or enroll new people in that mission, while not overwhelming our relatively small 42-acre farm.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool, you guys.
No, seriously. I mean,
Yeah.
Thank you.
That is.
And I think that's when you ask, like why we remember things, from 5-6 months ago on a very short thing, is I think that even, for me, I said it before. I mean, the fact that it was a father-son already made it so much easier to appreciate and to get things. But I think how you talk and what you present transcends, into the product from you and uphill. It goes back and forth. It's actually a very nice story. I just think it's a really cool play. Really cool play.
Oh, thank you. And I mean, the other thing I'll say to that is I'm still sort of the preeminent customer facing person within the business. So I'm the one sort of fielding the feedback if and when it comes. And I'm just I'm always reminded of the grace on one hand, but also just like how remarkable the or at least some consumers are. Like the number of messages I get from people who say, I found this product at Sobeys, and I was taken aback by the packaging, but I also really resonated with your mission and your commitment to farming in a certain way. And I'm so passionate about understanding where the products on my table come from. Like, we like to think that we're doing this work and hopefully educating people as we go, but it's pretty remarkable to see how many people in our communities are already kind of going in that direction of their own volition. It's clear that people are looking for a little bit more out of their, whether it's a grocery store, just like shopping experience, or a day trip with a family. People are really interested in connecting with the day-to-day in ways that maybe they wouldn't have been in the past. So that's been
about that.
I think, look, like Kenny and I started we both been in CPG for like 1,000 years, it feels like, right? Maybe Kenny's been in 1,000, I've been in slightly less, but I think even the two of us, we started looking around and realizing we don't really know much about, where everything comes from, right? And the idea that, even this idea that we should just be drinking from a tap, right? Like, like living in Toronto, that's not a thing, right? Like drinking from tap, what are you talking about, right? Like, so I think that, kind of watching what you guys are doing, we have a real appreciation. We've been down a bunch of these paths. We had an aquaculturalist on the last episode, and so, kind of like, we realized all sorts of things, like, even where we buy our fish from and things like that. No idea where that comes from. Like, no idea where that supply chain happens, or, you kind of, the common sense would be like, oh, well, it's a fish. It comes from the sea. It must be renewable. And you realize, no, that's actually a big load of shit, right? Because it depends on how you fish and like
how you fish, where you fish, why you fish,
like all these things to be more sustainable. So I hear you. I think the consumer really is starting to try and understand it. and less from an apocalyptic, like we're killing the world. We get it, but it's too big of a concept. So I almost need to start at the bottom and figure out, like, where does my shit come from, right? So if I buy shit, where does my shit come from, right? Because I can control that. And so if I buy less shit that can't go back to the earth, then maybe I'm starting a process that makes things a little bit better, right? So it's amazing to hear the journey you guys are on. We would love to do this again, I think, with you guys. Kenny also comes out in the fall, so it'd be cool for us to maybe come out to the farm if that's a thing, and we can figure out how to organize that. But that might be something
kind of cool. Be nice. I'd like to walk it. I'd like to just see what you do. I mean, I just think it's really important.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Right?
We'd love it. Thank you so much. I can't believe we're kind of like, it feels like we just started, but we're like out of time already. If people want to find you, where do they find you guys? Like, what's the easiest way if they want to reach out?
Yeah. So, I mean, you can always reach out. If you do have questions, you can reach out to me directly. So my email address is Kieran, Kieran, at Heartwood Farm, HEARTWOODFARM, singular.ca. Or by phone, and actually that all that information is on our website, which is heartwoodfarm.ca. If you're looking for our products in a retail environment, you can find us at a select Sobeys, Whole Foods, Farm Boys, Loblaws and Zehrs, Goodness Me. We've kind of, we've started to infiltrate this world of large grocery, as well as a number of independents. Again, if you have questions about specific stores, feel free to reach out to me directly. And
increasingly on the West Coast, right?
So actually, this is I was going to throw this in before we started, for Kenny's sake, at the very least. We are going to start distributing to the West Coast come April. So we're partnering with a distributor who deals with Western Canada, and so we're super excited to get the non-alcoholic products out west.
That's good.
We'll keep you posted there.
Please do. Like, seriously, yeah. And for things like this, if you have cool things happening, like we do two things. We do this like the hour-long sort of podcast, but we also do quick 10, 15 minuters on YouTube just to keep our audiences knowing what the hell you guys are doing. So if you got some cool or innovative or something you want to talk about, or some cool listing opportunity, just let us know and we can probably
we'll definitely bring you in. It wouldn't be hard to do. So
no, it's all good.
Awesome.
So sorry, last question. So because I don't think I ever, so the farm boy, if anyone's curious, because the farm boy at Brown's Line and QEW, which is the one near me, carries your product. I figured that out, so I go there. But where, like, so the alcoholic stuff,
right?
We're like, is that an LCBO thing? So I can wander into LCBO and get it, or I got to come up to you guys, or what do I?
Great question. And there have been some recent developments on that front. So for the last 5+ years, almost all of that has been online or in person at the farm. So all of that has been direct customer business. But this year, that's actually, I guess we're in the process of transitioning, and we just landed our grocery listing for 2 of our ciders. So Eve Goes Badass is the cayenne pepper one, as well as Forest Garden, which is our straight ahead cider made with real maple syrup, as we actually we tap trees at the farm. So yet another kind of farm tie-in. So those 2 ciders you'll be finding in grocery stores in the next couple months. And then in LCBO retail, we're just in the process of finalizing a listing for Eve Goes Badass. So you mentioned the cayenne pepper and honey and how cool that is. You will be able to find that in select LCBOs as of this spring. I will say we're doing this the way we've done everything. So we're starting out kind of slow and steady and letting it happen organically. So we're not going far and wide. We're not hitting all 700 LCBOs across the province or whatever it is. We're going to start out regionally, likely in kind of Guelph, KW, Hamilton, and like Toronto. So just in select stores, but we're hoping that we can really build up well and do things the right way and really nurture those relationships, and then we'll see where it goes. But yeah, so that's a big new development on the alcohol front.
I can make that work. My middle daughter is applying for uni, and Laurier's on her list.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So that's how, I just won't tell her that, but go there. Then I'll jump into the area so I can because
totally. We do have a good presence around KW because, like I said, Matt and myself still live there. And I will say, Laurier, it's a great school. Waterloo was kind of lacking on the student culture sort of campus pride thing. Laurier's got it in spades. So if that's how it works out, she's gonna have a good time.
Yeah. I'll let her know. That's awesome. Wow, that's really exciting. So listen, when you firm that up, definitely ping us back. We'll bring you on for the 15 because I think we do have a following in that KW area as well.
Oh, awesome.
So we'll kind of like give you a bit of a boost and see if we can't make your organic go a little bit faster. So,
okay, all right,
yeah,
amazing. We really appreciate it,
gentlemen. That was awesome. Thank you very much for doing this with us. Seriously, it was good.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. This has been fun. We've never we host informal podcasts all the time, just amongst ourselves that aren't recorded, but we've never done something like this before. So really appreciate you guys bringing us on. It's been a lot of fun.
No, that's fantastic. It was a great story.
Yeah,
great story.
Amazing. Thank you so much.